Hello everyone, in today's video I will be going over my full process for creating this Moody abstract floral painting. I will be sharing my tips, the supplies I use, and the intuitive approach I use when creating my abstract pieces. If you'd like to follow along, please keep watching. For today's painting, I'm going to be using the Legion Stonehenge Aqua Cold Pressed Watercolor paper. This one is 100% cotton. It is the 9 by 12 inch. And it's also in a block. I recommend for this painting because we're gonna be using a lot of water. There's gonna be a lot of moving the paper around, that you either have it on a block or you tape it down, your paper down to something so you can move it around, because this is a very intuitive, loose style abstract floral painting. I also have my spray bottle. I plan on spraying the paints. I plan on doing a lot of wet on wet. So it's really good to have a spray bottle. I also have my watercolor palette. Today I am using my Magello Studio palette, which has a lot of different colors. I'm gonna stick to some Moody colors today, so I'm gonna use a lot of darker purples and blues and perhaps some like ochres and things that remind me of fall. Just gonna get my palette nice and misted. I like using a mister spray bottle because then I'm not using a water bottle that's too intense and it's overly saturating my paints. I just want to give them a light mist to wake them up. I don't want them drowning. I also have some fresh water. I like to use 2 jars a lot of times, one for dirty water and then one just to quickly rinse my brush off to make sure it's clean. And then I also have some salt with me. I like to keep salt on my desk. I like the textured effect that it gives when I sprinkle it into watercolors. Some paints really react cool with the salt. Others I found not so much. It just depends, but it's fun to add texture, so I like to have salt on my desk, especially for an abstract painting. I feel like it just adds another cool layer and effect to them. I also have some inspo pics pulled up on my Pinterest board. I have a board just for Moody flowers. I am just using these as inspiration ideas. I do not want to go in and completely copy an image. You have to be very careful with Pinterest. I find that Pinterest is such a wonderful tool for inspiration. However, you also need to be aware that these are people's photos and it's their art, it's their intellectual property, it's their artist licensing. So you just want to use them for inspiration. Like, I love the color here. I love the composition of these leaves here. I love these filler flowers back here. Things like that. It's just helping me create my own image. Whereas royalty-free sites like Unsplash and Pexels, you can directly copy an image. Of course, it's going to be in your own artist way, but it's a little different. So Pinterest is wonderful, but use it with the knowledge that you're just using it for inspiration to kind of compose your own idea from various photos and images. As for the brushes I plan to use today, I have an idea of what I want to use, but I'm going to be very intuitive. I'm going to start with my silver black velvet brushes. I like these. These are loose. They're very fluffy. They are not stiff and snappy like my Princeton Heritage, so I like that for that looser abstract feeling. But I also want to incorporate my Kristy Rice brushes. I have these. She is an artist here on YouTube. If you don't follow her, she's amazing. She has great tutorials and tips. I love her watercolor collections. She collects a lot of like vintage tins or palettes, and I love her. But I also love her brushes. She sells them on Amazon. This is where I got mine. I can't remember where else she sells them, maybe directly on her own website. But I like her 3/4 inch wash brush, and I may use her dagger. I'm not totally sure. I like using a wash brush with abstract sometimes because it forces me to not overly detail any of the florals I'm using. For example, in this case, with the abstract, I have to be more loose with it, or excuse me, with the flat brush, I have to be more loose and abstract with it and just kind of give the general image of a flower, which is what I'm going for this tutorial. So I'm just gonna mix some colors up. You do not need to have the exact colors I have or use. This is more just for inspiration for you, but I'm gonna go ahead and mix up some of my Shadow Violet from Daniel Smith because I really like, that's such a great Moody color. It's like a very muted purple, but when it dries, it becomes separated into multiple colors. I'm also going to load up some of this Pematite Genuine that I have shoved in the corner over here. I had this whole set already filled out or filled with paints, and then I added some additionals. And it's such a large mixing palette that I can just go ahead and throw some colors that I like using in the corner. I'm also going to grab some of this Lunar Red Rock, but you can get, you know, burnt umbers, burnt siennas. You can get your crimson colors. You can even mix those together to create more of a earthy, moody color. I'm also going to mix up a little bit of my Lunar Black. I don't have a completely thought out idea. I'm just kind of painting intuitively. This is a very relaxing, very calming painting to do. I don't want to stress out about every little detail of this painting. I'm also going to go in here and get some of my Moon Glow from Daniel Smith and mix a little bit of that onto my palette. Moon Glow and Shadow Violet are kind of similar. Moon Glow is much more of a purpley violet, whereas Shadow Violet is more brown, I would say. I'm also going to throw in a little bit of my Rose of Ultramarine from Daniel Smith. Very beautiful reddish purple color, pinkish purple color. It's like a magenta almost. But I'm going to mix that with some other colors to mute it down a little bit. I'm also going to throw in some sepia, which I'm running really low on. This is my my Winsor & Newton sepia. It's very greeny. I like the color a lot, but it is very greeny. And I don't know if I just had an old tube because I didn't buy it that long ago. But I do find it's very granular. Okay, so I'm just going to take my spray bottle and I'm just going to spray the paper. I'm gonna go ahead and start with my round brush from Silver Black Velvet. And I'm gonna throw down some of this Pematite Genuine in some loose, round floral shapes. I'm just kind of taking it and touching it around like that, leaving the center open, just adding a little bit more color. I'm being very loose and free with this. I'm gonna go ahead and throw another one in there. I'm gonna tap some Shadow Violet in there. It's just a blob of paint with a little bit left, negative space left in the middle. This is going to dry down and look a lot lighter, and then we're gonna go in with more colors on top of it. So add some of that Moon Glow. Or any purpley browns or blues that you want to add in. And you can see the water is causing it to almost snake out, which is really fun. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a little bit of salt on there. Maybe right here as well. That might get disturbed as I keep going, but that's okay. I'm gonna take my 3/4 inch wash brush. I didn't mix up any greens yet, but I'm gonna take my Purline green, it's a deep green, and mix them up on my tray. And I'm gonna throw a little bit of my sepia in there to deepen it up even more. I'm running low, I need to add some more. And I'm going to just start laying down some stripes like that. And then I'm gonna take the edge, oh, cat hair, and just start dabbing like so, back and forth like so. I'm gonna take a little bit of the color off so it's not all the same color. I don't like a lot of uniformity with my paints. I want there to be a big variety of color. I'm gonna spray that just a little bit. And I'm gonna take another one and kind of dot it here. I'm going to mix in a little bit of my, oh, what's this color called? It's another green from Daniel Smith that I really, jadeite green. little bit of that brown. And do a little bit of sepia mixed with that Purine green over here. And give those flowers a little bit more of definition. Like so. I haven't decided what I want to do in the middle. I might tone this down a little bit with some buff titanium to kind of neutral, you know, give it some neutrals. I'm gonna keep these centers empty for now. I'm not gonna do much with those. I'm gonna go ahead and mix up some of my buff titanium. I see one that's like, looks like hydrangeas, but they're like white hydrangeas, so I'm gonna kind of mimic that very loosely. This is, I'm not being accurate, as you can tell. That's not the intention of this painting. Just loosely filling it with fluff, and I can go back and add some definition later. In the interim, I'm just gonna go ahead and splatter. All of this is very on the fly, very organic and intuitive. I'm gonna take my spray bottle, spray a little bit more, especially down here, where I might add a little bit more of that buff titanium, which is the Daniel Smith buff titanium. So now I'm gonna go in with a really moody dark purple. I'm mixing some Bloodstone Genuine with some Imperial Purple and a little bit of Moonstone. Those are all Daniel Smith colors, and I'm just going to make little circles like this. Maybe draw some lines out. More little circles. Throw some up here to add some balance. I'm gonna leave a little bit of room for some greenery. I'm gonna leave that blank for now. And I might pop in a little bit right here. Go ahead and just dab a little bit more of the Bloodstone Genuine color in there to deepen up some areas. I'm going to take my spray bottle, kind of spray that way. I'm going to tilt this up and let this drip and bleed a little bit. You can see those colors just, you know, following the water and doing what it wants to do. This is a great painting to just let watercolors do what they want to do while giving them a little gentle guidance. This is about letting go of control and just watching what your paints do, watching how your paints interact together, figuring out what colors you like. It's all a learning experience. Every time I paint, I learn something different about my paints, about what I like, about how watercolors behave. It's an ongoing learning process. I want to add a little bit of greenery right here. It feels a little empty. So I'm gonna kind of mimic what I did here slightly. And put a little bit, I don't want it to look exactly like that because I don't want to look like it's like shooting through. But I want to give it just enough structure so it looks like a plant. Maybe add a little bit more fullness right here. I'm gonna go back in with that buff titanium, and I believe I used the wash brush for these right here, but I'm just gonna fill in like that. I think I'm gonna add another one of those dark red flowers right here, just like a little hint of it. You can tell as the paper is drying a little bit, I can add on another layer of color without it bleeding out as much. But the first layer that did bleed out fanned out to this lighter, really pretty pinky color, which is really beautiful. I do actually want to add a hint of my Potter's Pink. This would be a beautiful color to mix in here. I am not really sure how I want to incorporate it. I just want the color in here somewhere. Perhaps right here in the closer to the center. Going to spray the blank areas so that when I throw down a little bit of this splatter, it bleeds. Maybe lift up. And let that float up a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit more of my salt and sprinkle it into some of these puddles of water. I could just take my paper towel and absorb some of the water, but instead I'm going to use it to my benefit and let the salt work some of its crystal magic. I will say, using salt, I have found that if there's too much water pooling and I dissolve salt in it, it almost dilutes the salt to the point where I don't see much of a difference on my page. But it's, it doesn't really affect it one way or the other. So there is like a water level where salt works better than other times as far as the crystal effect it leaves behind. I'd love to do a tutorial just on, salt. I could get various types of salt. This is just table salt, but there's like the flaky salt, the sea salt, and see if there's any difference in the way the crystal patterns react to the watercolor. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this first layer dry. And when I come back, we'll add some minor details on top. I don't want to go too crazy, but I want to see what it looks like completely dry and then go from there. Okay, so the first layer is completely dry. I'm going to give you a close-up so you can see some of that salt work right here. You can see where the grains of salt had dried. I added some right here, but I don't feel like they showed up very well, which is fine. And it does look a little bit more desaturated. So I really like this so far. This is just a prism from my light catcher, but I like a lot of the loose elements of it, and I don't want to over detail much, but I do want to give a little bit more definition to the beige hydrangeas right here, and perhaps add some in into the center. This one kind of looks like it's upturned, so this would be the center, and I don't know if I want to mess with that. These look like they're kind of facing forward, and this one looks like it's facing down. That's what I'm seeing. It's abstract, but that's what I'm seeing. So I'm going to take the same wash brush, the Kristy Rice wash brush that I used for the first layer. This time I'm not spraying it again. I'm just going in just wet on dry. So let me mix up some of that buff titanium again. So I'm just going to throw in a few little, I'm just taking the edge of my brush, similar to what I did here in the first layer of the hydrangeas, and just dot in here and there. So there's that. Let me add a little bit here. What do I want to do? I'm gonna turn this to the side like that and go that way, just so that my brush is angled the way I did it here. I'm also going to add a little bit of my Sennelier warm gray to give some further definition. Yeah, I like that. I really like Sennelier's grays. I use their warm gray. I think it's just called cool gray, and then Sennelier gray. They're some of my favorites that I've found. They're creamy, and they just, the color that they use is just perfect for me in my palette. I feel like this is just too much of the same color. So I'm gonna drop this brush. I'm gonna get a smaller black velvet brush, and I'm gonna dabble in a little bit of that Sennelier with some of my other Sennelier grays to give it a little bit more definition. I'm gonna dab a little bit of this up, just so there's some lighter areas. I feel like that's all looking a little too homogeneous as far as opacity levels. I'm gonna go in with my bigger brush, my bigger silver brush, and I'm going to get this dark purple color and just give a little bit of definition here and there. Got some water on my brush, and I'm just blending these out a little bit. I don't want a huge like opacity difference between the first layer and the second layer. I'm not trying to come in with a fully opaque block of color on top. I'm just trying to give a hint of definition. Like that. I then want to go over the greenery a little bit. Nothing crazy. Again, I don't want to come in with too strong of a color. I just want to add some definition. So I'm going to come up. I also don't need to stick exactly onto the previous plant. Like, I'm not trying to go over it directly. In fact, I feel inclined to add some separate leaves here, which I like. like that a lot. And do something similar down here. This needs a little bit more definition because this is looking more like a blob than the other one. It's all looking a little too similar, so I'm gonna like that. Just going around the greenery and adding hints of color. I don't want it to be too dark. That felt a little too dark. So I'm going to blend that out a little bit. I can even spray it again if I want, like that. Got a little bit too much of that jadeite green in there for what I'm going for. So. Adding a little line in these plants right here. Nothing very strong. Okay, so I actually think I'm gonna go in with this 1/2" dagger brush and add a little more detail to these flowers. I'm debating whether or not I want to add detail, but I think a little bit more definition would help. So I'm going to take the edge of this brush and make some marks like this. It's kind of dry. I don't want to cover up all that beautiful bleeding that happened on the first layer. But I do want to give these just a little bit more definition. And this is where your own intuition comes in. What you want to do, if you want to leave it, if you want to keep going. There is a point where you end up overdoing it. And I don't want to get to that point, and I fear I may be pushing it a little bit. So I'm gonna take my candy squirt bottle, and I just feel like the details are too sharp. I want this to look unfocused and diffused. And I don't want to go too far. I'm also going to take this brush and I'm going to continue to do a little bit of work here. I really think that these centers need something, and I've been debating on what that something is. I think I'm gonna go in with some yellow ochre. I feel like that's a safe color that I would like in the middle. Yeah. I thought about putting sepia in there and didn't like that. And I can fit a little bit of ochre. Something about a yellow center to a circle, your mind says, that's flower. It's just what we do. I'm also going to, I have a blank space here, so I'm gonna put a little line here to give this flower a little bit of detail, like that. I'm also going to add a little bit of detail to the leaves around the flowers. So I'm gonna take my Purine green that I used for them. Oh, this split. That's okay. I'm just gonna use it like that. See what happens. And a little over here as well. I want to add a little bit of this yellow ochre in somewhere else. I feel like it would add a pretty touch. So maybe some little blobs right here, maybe right here. Just some sprays of flower, kind of like how you add baby's breath to a bouquet. I'm going to find little areas that are, yes, I like that. I find that that's helping add some brightness. Because even though I'm going for moody colors, I still like this earthy fall color. And yellow ochre is such a wonderful color for so many reasons. I feel like you could throw it into pretty much any painting and it works. I'm gonna spray some of these out, actually, so they're not all perfect. Like that one looks a little too, the edges were a little too sharp, and I want it to be a little bit less defined. This is another really great way to play with brushes maybe that have not been getting a lot of love. This is so loose and abstract that you can throw in all these different types of shapes that I'm showing you, do so many different things and cool effects, and it creates a lot of interest in your painting without having to do a whole lot. You're just using a different brush with the way the bristles are just shaped differently, and it by default creates a different look. I find as much as I love my round brushes, things can look very uniform, and we're doing the opposite of that here. We don't want anything to really look too uniform. I'm gonna just throw a few more here. I'm finding I'm really enjoying the yellow. Okay, I don't want to overdo it, so I'm gonna leave it there. I'm going to let that dry, and we will see what it looks like when it's all the layers are completely dry. So this is the final piece once all the layers have dried. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. Please like and subscribe if you like these kinds of videos and would like to see more. Or if there's other video ideas that you'd want to see from me, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy painting. Bye!